said, be brave, my son, I'll be home soon. The boy held on to hope till he got that awful news. And as they folded up the stars and stripes, 21 guns pointed towards the sky. As the shots rang out, he flinched a little each time. Then a soldier in his best dress walked up to him, and you know the rest.
This show is brought to you by Operation Encore. Operation Encore is a 501c nonprofit that is helping change the lives of our veteran community. Let me tell you a little bit about what they do. They are helping veterans get into the music industry. They're helping them learn the business, get songs recorded, and not only that, making dreams happen. You know, most of these veterans have got the idea of becoming a musician way before they went into the military. And Operation Encore is filling that gap from while they served in the military and helping them change their lives and live out those dreams. Operation Encore is a nonprofit. You can go to this link right there and click on it. Give them a little help. Hit that donate button. Follow them. Learn about all the great things that Operation Encore does for our veterans. Hey, welcome everybody to Spirits and Stories. I'm your host, Donald Dunn. Hey, today we've got a topic that, I have been very interested in. There's 3 different parts of it. We're going to talk a little bit of philosophy. We're going to talk a little bit about the brain, and we're going to talk about some crypto with AI. So all of the stuff that we've had in the past, we're going to just combine it into one episode. So let's meet Jordan, the driving force behind the Sitari Network, a pioneering crypto AI endeavor designed as a future oracle to help humanity anticipate upcoming challenges with years of experiences as a lead developer. In the crypto space, Jordan has blended his passion for AI distributed systems to launch his innovative project. Let's bring on Jordan.
Hi.
How's it going, man?
It's going good. How are you?
Man, I cannot complain. I think if I was doing any better, it'd be illegal.
Oh boy.
So let's start out with a little bit of your background, man. What brought you into the blockchain crypto space?
So I'm a techie. I've always been interested in computers. I used to build them as a kid, and I'd play on them and I'd program on them. And, I was into scripting when I was young. So it's just kind of as a natural fit for me. Once I discovered blockchain, though, I saw that it had a real amazing power to make a decentralized kind of network that anybody could participate in, anybody could connect up and prove, hey, I can help this network flourish. I can do valuable work here. So that's kind of what got me interested in that kind of blockchain technology. Mm-hmm. But even before then, I was interested in AI. So I was interested in AI way back, looking at the brain. I actually took the, a lot of AI people, they come through it through computers. They're like, okay, what kind of cool stuff can we do with computers? I was actually coming at it at a different angle. I was interested in AI because I wanted to know how the brain works. So I would look at the brain and then say, well, can we put any of these patterns or algorithms into computers? So I was looking at it from the brain perspective.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the brain is a fascinating computer. I mean, that's really what it is. And there's so much untapped areas of the brain that we don't even use. And I think there's a lot to be learned in that area. You also have a bit of a philosophy background too, if I remember reading in your bio. Am I correct?
That's right. Yeah, I took lots of philosophy courses, and I grew up in religion, and that probably is what gave me some of my interest in philosophy. Mm-hmm. Every religion, they have a theology, and it kind of seems to me like the story they have for their theology is kind of a wrapper around the philosophical concept of like metaphysics. So I've always been interested in that kind of stuff too.
Okay, yeah, me too. You know, there's I don't know, I kind of find it there's a peace in philosophy, you know,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of the anger that's built in the world today. And I was watching your video on how the Sitari network is going to work, and it said one thing about, you know, helping us predict upcoming challenges. And I have a feeling this network is going to be extremely busy because there's going to be a bunch of challenges coming. There's no way to avoid that. What when you got started with this, what was the big plan? Was it for more for like predicting markets and economies and stuff like that, or was it more for predicting dangers of mankind type stuff?
I guess it would have to be the latter, because I just want to be able to predict everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have something like that, you have a network or a system that can predict everything, then you can anticipate any changes. So on the economic side, I mean, that would mean if we had this back in the day, we would have seen things like the housing crisis happen before it happened. We would have said, oh, you know, this stuff is coming to fruition. It's building. We don't see it yet, but we can predict that it's going to happen because it's building right now. So if we had been able to see that ahead of time, because we had a future oracle, and we would have not had one. We would have changed the laws that went in to create it. We would have modified some economic regulations. You know, we would have figured it out, and we wouldn't have had a crazy housing crisis. You know, so I think in every domain it could help us, not just with economics, but, you know, our environment, everything.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I first watched this video, it seemed to me like things that you could put stats to it would be easier to start figuring. You know, the stock market uses all sorts of indicators to predict or at least anticipate what should be coming, right?
Right.
And when you get into human nature, you lose a lot of those ability to have statistics. So on the human nature side, are we using the AI portion of it or the machine learning portion of it to learn what happened in the past, learn what the outcome, you know, the causes of those, the outcomes were, and then find common denominators in the current
Absolutely.
lifespan? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, because the way I see it is anything can be, if you can measure it, turn it into a number, then you can predict the future of it. And, you know, with advanced technologies and AI, it doesn't have to be turned into a number. You can, you know, you can put in some text and predict the future of that text. We see that in large language models. So, but, you know, we're focused on metrics, as you mentioned, things that are numbers, just because they're the low-hanging fruit to begin with. But then as it evolves, yes, we'll be able to manage any kind of data, being able to predict the future of it.
You know, I like how you said turning it into numbers, because the amazing thing, I love math, and one of the amazing thing about numbers is you remove emotion.
Yes.
And so that is the best part about doing that. There's no hidden agenda if the data is raw and true. And
right.
So I think that is an awesome way to do it. Let's focus a little bit on the creation portion of it. The first thing I have to ask, the name is really close to the people that made Bitcoin. You know, you had Satoshi and Satoshi. So did that come something to do with how the name came about?
No. So being interested in philosophy and stuff like that, I studied a lot of Eastern religions and how, you know, what do they think? How do they think? And one of the words that they use over there is Satori.
Okay.
So it's the concept of, I mean, the logo is this guy meditating, right? So it's the concept of you're meditating, you're quiet, you're thinking about something, you're just, being. And then all of a sudden you realize something, eureka. You see this thing that you didn't understand before, or whatever. You can't put it into words maybe, but what it means is you've been enlightened. It means I see something.
Okay.
I've woken up to something new. I've been enlightened. So that's why I chose the name Satori, because I thought, the foundation of intelligence within our brain is future prediction. That's the bottom layer of our informational stack of intelligence, right? We predict the future on a subconscious level all the time, everywhere, all at once. And so because we're doing that, the rest of our brain becomes really efficient, because the calculations that it does, what it's trying to figure out, is all focused on anticipating data that's coming in, right?
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Man. So when you're analyzing the brain, right? I kind of feel like the brain does something similar to this. I mean, we learn from our life experiences
Mm-hmm.
to predict that we made a mistake here, don't do this again, and
Right.
so forth. So I mean, the setup really is similar to the human mental thought process.
That's
You
right.
know? How does so I seen the way the network's connected, right? So somebody downloads the program, they become a node, and how does in the background, how does it run to, like the computer says, okay, you're going to focus on this thing of economics. How does that work that it's running in the, I guess, in the background while they still can use their computer, or do
That's
they
right.
have to have a dead and okay. So how does that part of it work? It seems like it would take quite a bit of processor or RAM to run this program.
It does. So it runs in the background, so you can still use the machine. If it's pinging your machine too much and it's not usable for your purposes, you can pause the engine. There's just one button. You can say, you know what, cool it. Don't try to make the best model at this moment. You can come back to that when I'm sleeping, and you can churn all night, right? So you can pause it. But the way it works is, you download the Satori neuron. It starts running on your machine. It goes out to the network and it says, is there some data you'd like me to look at? What should I look at? And the network will say, okay, we don't have enough predictors on this data stream. And actually, it will give them several, as much as your computer can handle.
Mhm.
But we'll just pretend for, description purposes, it gives them one data stream. And that machine says, okay, I'm going to subscribe to this data stream. So this is a measure of something out there in the real world that's a number, like the temperature, on a daily or an hourly basis, whatever. Could be a price, right? But it's one thing out there in the world that continues to change over time, and we continue to measure it. And so it subscribes to this data stream, and that data stream, in theory, will never end. It'll just continue to listen to it forever. And then as it's listening, it remembers the history. It records the history. It doesn't forget it. It has it there. And it says, I'm going to try to make a model of this thing that predicts the future of it as best I can. And so it tries to make a model, and it makes one. And then it can test that model against the history that it's been, grabbing and keeping. So then it will test that model, and it will say, okay, is this better than the model I previously made? Is this better than the one I have in memory? And if it's better, well, if it's not better, it will just throw it away and try again. But if it
Okay.
is better, it will then keep it and say, okay, this is the best model I have. And it will broadcast out its prediction of, what that model implies. And in the, this best model implies that gold is going to go up by 3% in the next month or something like that. So then it will broadcast that out to the network, and the other neurons can take that information into account in their own models. They can use it. They can leverage the work that's been done by that neuron in using it. So that's kind of the, kind of the low layer, like how the system actually works. What is each neuron actually doing? It's just continually trying to make better models all day, every day. And then when it finds one, broadcasts out a new prediction to everybody.
Okay. And now, so the people running the nodes, they can see all these other models that, what it's predicting and so forth. So if they were interested in something else, they would have access to be able to go and see that, or does it all push everything to a website with an interface?
Right, the interface. So if you don't even have to run a node to see what the network is predicting. You can just go to satorinet.io and search. And eventually that search will turn into a language. It'll turn into a large language model so that you can just have a conversation about the future. But we're not to that level yet. So we're still implementing the entire structure for the network. But right now, you can still go to the website and just search the data streams, like the raw data, and see the predictions that have been made most recently about that data. So yeah, it's all open. It's open source. It's free. There's no charge. Everything's good.
Wow, that is. I did not expect it to be open source. That is amazing.
Yeah.
The other part of this, it sounds like, it's like the next level ChatGPT, because right now ChatGPT is only taking what it finds from the past.
Right.
It's not pulling anything about the future.
Right. Yes. It doesn't have this huge iceberg of future prediction underneath it. It's just the top layer. And if you ask about the future, it just guesses.
Yep.
So, that's something, but it's not good enough.
No. Yeah, absolutely. It's basically, and the way I anticipate it is, it's a next level. It's the Encyclopedia 2.0.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
Yeah. And it
so,
replaces search too, I think.
Yeah, it is. And, I use ChatGPT quite a bit. I do like it. I don't have nothing bad to say about it. And I don't believe that, there's a lot of conspiracy theory out there about what it's going to do in the future. And I've had a few other guests on the show that does talk about AI. And one of them that it talked about was, I asked, what do you think the future of AI? Where do you think it's going? Because there's so many people that believe it's going to take jobs and just destroy everything. And he said something really fascinating to me. He said, do you remember what it was like before the internet? And I said, yeah. He said, it's going to be really similar to that. Because in the future, everybody's not going to be talking on screens anymore. They're going to be back to talking to each other, because all the fake stuff that AI can do, you will have no clue when you're on a screen is whether it's real or not. And people are going to be starving for the real stuff, not the fake stuff. And it's going to cause us to have to be able to talk face to face. And I never thought of it like that,
Oh, yeah, I know it. I have kids. I have little ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the other day, my daughter saw a picture of like a giraffe or something. I don't remember. And she's like, is this real? Because she's seen pictures of unicorns and, all this kind of stuff. She's like, is it real? Like, that's a weird one, And so I'm like, yeah, that one's real. But pretty soon, how will they know? How will they know? So, yeah, I hear you.
I seen an ad, and I'm 99% sure that it's a fake ad. It was on, I think it was on TikTok is where I think I seen it. And it was Joe Rogan interviewing a guy that had some sort of program that he was selling. And I listened to a lot of the Joe Rogan episodes, and I've never heard him say anything about this product that he was advertising. And it was a straight ad for it. So I'm pretty sure that it was a fake, and there was no really emotions to the face or anything. But yeah, you're not going to, it's going to get to that point. It's already almost there. People are now AIing fake video chats and FaceTimes and stuff like that, So it is coming, but in our life, I think there is an amazing tool to be had. No different than the internet. The internet is an amazing tool. Just depends on how you use it. You can use it for bad. I can use a car for bad.
Sure.
It doesn't make it any more valuable or any less valuable. It's still a valuable tool. And so I think AI has that place. I use it a lot for editing my books and learning how to do new programming stuff and stuff like that. But I don't see it replacing people's jobs, because there's still a creativity that's only going to grow from humans as we're learning more from the AI. And what I was kind of getting at is, now we're going to go from learning something that we know about to, with your version of AI, we're going to learn about something that hasn't happened yet. It's coming from the future, allowing us to adjust and so forth. How do you see that changing the human? And I'm sorry, it was a long ways to get to that. But how do you see it changing people?
You mean when Satori comes to fruition and it can really be good at okay, so we don't have a future oracle on the planet. Okay, so what everybody tries to do is predict the future in their local domain. So if you're a weatherman, you're trying to predict the weather. If you're a CTO or CIO, you're trying to predict, the environment that your company is going to be in within, 5 years or something. And so we're all trying to predict the future, but we're doing it in a really isolated, siloed way, right? We don't share that information with everybody. We just use it to make our own decisions, right? That's what we do.
Yep.
Okay, so Satori, if it comes to fruition the way I hope, becomes a network that can take all of those predictions, and they'll be generated by machines, right? It can take all those predictions and bring them into, under one roof, bring them so that they can be correlated with each other, so that it can have this holistic view of the future, right? So if that happens, we call that a future oracle. It's the best thing on the planet that can tell us about the future, right? It's not perfect. It's going to make mistakes, but it's, way better than anything else that exists.
Yeah.
No. When that happens, it seems like there's a lot of things that, are knock-on effects from that. One of the big things is whatever it predicts could become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because people listen to it. They say, oh, that thing's really good at predicting. Well, I guess it's right. And so then they behave as if that's going to happen, and it makes it happen.
I could see that.
So that's one thing. We might want to come back and talk about that in detail later. But there's another thing that happens, I think, and that is, if we all have equal access to this, everybody knows what it's saying, we can all come into consensus immediately or pretty quickly on what to do. If we can then say, okay, well, Satori is predicting some kind of disaster here, like the housing crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then why don't we change our laws? What if, and we'll be able to give Satori hypotheticals. We can say, what if this law changed? What if, this kind of data looked different? Then what would the future be? And then it will be able to say, oh, in that case, I think this is what would happen. So we'll be able to determine kind of how to take the best actions to find the best outcome for our entire civilization as a species, right? And so I see one of the reasons that we don't take action, which sometimes is a very good thing because we don't know what we're doing. But I see that we bicker and we fight and we have different opinions and nobody knows who's right. With a future oracle, this is probably what's going to happen. And if we change this is probably the better outcome we'll get. And everybody knows it. And so it makes our decision-making process, makes us much more agile as a species. I kind of feel like throughout time, we as a species, I mean, we're the apex species on the planet, right? So the only reason for that is that we've been able to adapt to our environment again and again. We're the most adaptable thing. So we were able to adapt to savannas and, different, colder climates and all that kind of stuff. Then we were able to adapt to living in tribes and living in nation states. And, we've adapted to our social environment. And now we're in this kind of technology environment where we're surrounded by technology. We communicate through technology. Everything is technology. And technology is evolving at an exponential rate. And so what I see is the environment is evolving at an exponential rate. Can we keep up with it? Can we anticipate what we need to in order to, adapt to that environment? And I don't think the answer is yes, unless we build things like a future oracle that can kind of give us some warning ahead of time and tell us, hey, you better, just watch out for this, So I would say those two things are the major things that I see coming after this would be the self-fulfilling prophecies, and also the fact that if we use it correctly, it gives us the ability to adapt to the future more quickly.
Man, my mind just went into overdrive because now this kind of brings me back to, because when you first said, this is open source, right?
Yeah.
And then it brings me to, man, that's amazing. Everybody can use it. And then we said, well, what if you do know and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy? And then I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that, man. Should it be open source? The thing I do like what you said, though, was it's going to create something that we don't have anymore. Actual discussions.
Yeah.
We don't have to agree, but we can talk about it and figure out where we're getting the data and what is valid and what is not.
What's true.
Without being mad at each other. And so I think that part is great. But how, with it now being open source, what was the thought process? Do you think it could become self-fulfilling, or do you think it should have been something that once it's completely there, it should be at a higher level of use?
Okay. Good question. So being kind of a crypto guy,
Mm-hmm.
I was in the ethos back when it was headed by anarchists and libertarians and that kind of. So I kind of understand that decentralized systems give us a lot of power.
Yep.
They allow us to decentralize the power, the decision-making process to the group.
Yep.
So that's it being open source I don't think that's much of a problem.
Okay.
What we really don't want, so let's say it's closed source. And let's say it's, being created by some centralized entity like Google or something. Okay. Well, what happens is they generate this thing that's really good at future prediction, and it takes the world by storm, just like ChatGPT did. And then, well, since they're in control, they can manipulate those predictions. They can say, oh yeah, well, it predicted this, and isn't that convenient? It gives us more power. So, yes, they manipulate it, and then they have the power to make self-fulfilling prophecies to their own ends.
That is true too.
That's a big problem. So, I think the solution to that is you decentralize it from the start. You say anybody can. What you're trying to do is decentralize three things, as far as I can tell. You're trying to decentralize the production of it so that it can be produced by anybody. Anybody can make predictions. You're trying to decentralize the benefit of it for those predictions, for all that work that your computer is doing, all the cycles it's using, all the electricity. You're going to earn a token. So you distribute the profits, essentially, the benefit. And then with that, you use that token, what you've distributed, you use that token as a right to vote on how the system should work. So now you've distributed the control of the entire AI system. So we want as many voices to be heard as possible, right? I mean, we're trying to democratize the control of this future predicting AI. So, you might say, well, what kind of control does that give, the community? I think it gives the community the ability to choose what data streams matter to us. Because remember, it's predicting specific data streams and then correlating them with each other. So some data streams, are not very valuable. Like you might say, okay, Sitari neuron, I want you to watch the views on this person's website or something. Like, no, it doesn't matter to anybody but that person. And that's pretty much it, right? So you want the community to be able to say, okay, well, we all want to know what the CPI number is going to be. So we should be predicting that. We all want to know what inflation is going to be. What are the jobs numbers next month? We all want to know the biggest things that affect all of us. And so people use the vote to vote on those things, to say, well, this is what I want to know. And so, yeah, that's how you distribute the power and the control over this AI system, I think is the right way to do it.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. And I do like the fact that now there's no benefit for Google or somebody to really get involved with it because it is open source. And right. So there's no secret formula to it. They would have to start from the beginning and do it themselves. And so when we're talking the coins, right? So it runs similar to any other crypto. It has a market with it that controls the value and so forth. Mm-hmm. Is this similar to like Bitcoin? Is there a point where as somebody uses, there's only going to be X number available, or is this something more like Stellar, where there's basically an unlimited amount of coins out there?
So what we want to do is always be able to incentivize new predictions to be made. Mm-hmm. So I figured, okay, well, the token holders are technically in charge of this. They can change it. And so in the future, they might change it. But the way I've started it out is saying, okay, we're going to have a slow rise, kind of a linear rise to a certain point where it's going to plateau. And Bitcoin had kind of a meteoric rise where it was like straight up and then it plateaus. We're going to just, even that out for a little longer of time, And then once it kind of plateaus and the inflation rate goes from like 100% down to like 2%, then we're just going to stick at 2% from there on out. So like in 20 years or something, then it's like 2% forever. And so I feel like that's enough that it allows new entrants into the market to say, hey, I want to get part of that 2%. I want to, but it also incentivizes people early on to build the network, to kind of scale it. So once it's scaled, hopefully we're at that 2% mark.
Okay. Well, like any other business and any other startup, it requires capital. Have you guys started reaching out to people? I mean, with it being open source, it had to be probably a little bit tougher to get, companies to want to invest in it. But what have you guys been doing to raise capital?
So I started this like over 2 years ago. I saw the vision. I actually had the idea like 10 years ago, okay, but I didn't know how to implement correctly. So 2 years ago, I was like, okay, now I have enough skills. Now I understand it enough and I understand the environment enough that I can do this. And so what I decided to do, I knew it would be hard to get capital. And so I figured I'll just build it. I'll just build the smallest, simplest foundation version of this. And I don't know how long it'll take. I thought 1 to 2 years, and it's a little bit over 2 years now. But I thought I can build it on my nights and weekends. Eventually, people will start building it with me, and I do have a few people that are building it with me now. We have had some people or some groups recently want to invest because they see, oh, this is a real thing. It's coming to fruition. You're in beta. You can actually download it. It's not quite bug free, so we haven't launched. But, we're working on it. We'll get there this year for sure, probably soon. So people have begun to notice and they've offered. We haven't taken any investment yet.
Yeah.
We might not need to. I mean, because I think if we ever do, it would probably be after launch because we can get all the way to launch by ourselves, so why not? So, but to take it to the next level, I do think we're going to need investment, because we've built this kind of MVP layer. It does all the things, but in a very basic way. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're at. So to take it to the next level where the AI engine is really powerful, we're going to need some like real cool data scientists types and a lot of developers. And so we're going to need some investment to take it to the next level.
You hear that, Elon? Get in here. No, I mean, I know there's no way it could be cheap,
right.
It's going to take capital and I think it kind of gets messy when you do start bringing in investors, because now you don't have necessarily the blockchain voting. You have investors and they want to return on their money. It wasn't a 501c that they donated to.
Right.
And so that area does get kind of tangled. And I think it's great that you guys are not doing it till after launch, because in early stages, I know with my nonprofit that I'm building, if I would have known then what the plan was later, I would have had different names for it. I would have had different thought processes of how it was built, what needed to be done first, and everything. And instead, I went at it as, let's just start here and we'll see where it goes. And
sometimes you got to do that.
Yeah. And so I think it's great to wait until you're at that launch period before investors come in, because you're creating the foundation now that's going to decide what the future holds, what it does.
That's right.
And once you start bringing in those other people, that decision process will get tangled. So I think
it muddies the water a little bit.
Yeah.
So my ideal situation would be this: we get to launch, people see it, the community actually continues to grow, and it starts to scale, and it's a real thing, and the token becomes valuable, and we can just what's it called? We can just fund whatever we need to based on the token value itself. So if that happens, that would be great. I don't know if that's going to happen. So, but with that scenario, this will happen either way. The Sitari Foundation, that's kind of in charge of helping the ecosystem evolve and grow and everything. That foundation is going to be a 501c3. So we don't have the designation. I'm not a business guy. I'm a developer, so I haven't been really working on that part of it yet. But that's what we want. We want it to be an open source and a nonprofit organization.
I was thinking the same thing, just right there, that this is something that I think when you got to that point where it was accurate and you could pinpoint more streams in a very smaller area to get an exact number, there's a lot of things that some of these nonprofit organizations would help. You think about all the nonprofits that went to Afghanistan and to Ukraine to pull people out of there and so forth. It could potentially get to the point where it's predicting the best methods, best ways, to conduct these kind of missions. There's a lot of human trafficking organizations out there that are trying to prevent that. And in our current society, with the way the open borders are and everything else that's going on, they're losing that battle.
Hmm.
And something like this may also be a way to help track down where people are based off of activity and websites and all these other data points that only the FBI, a smaller organization, has access to do. But this can be done now on a much larger scale.
That's awesome. Yeah, I never thought about that.
So I think there is a lot of nonprofit type uses for this.
Cool.
I'm sure half the people listening to this says, I'm downloading it and finding out what the next lottery numbers are. But, it has much more meaning than that. There's a lot of good stuff that could come from something like this. And I think that's amazing, So
yeah, me too.
The more we talked, I'm glad you open sourced it, because none of that type of stuff would have ever came about if it got in the hands of Google or these big companies.
That's right.
Now it's about shareholders. So
right. Yes. Exactly.
So that's amazing, man. My hat's off to you. So the crypto part of it, right? And I go back to this because I do like crypto. I do believe there is a place to it. And I personally kind of feel as when I stepped out, it was in the process of me closing my business and everything, is when I did step out. And I was a fan of basically 3 types of coins, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yep. I had a lot of XRP.
Cool.
I had a lot of ADA.
Nice.
And it was all based off of the leadership, the teams that were involved. And so, and to this day, I still believe in those things. It seems like XRP's kind of changed a little bit as far as what they were planning on doing there. But ADA, I think, is going to do a lot of great humanitarian type things, especially in Africa and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Do you see this spinning in any way to where there's additional uses on the blockchain for these other kinds of projects, other people to build off of it to create something else?
I don't know. I hope so. I when I think of, okay, what can you build on top of this? I actually don't think the blockchain route, like there's probably stuff there, but that's just not where my mind goes. My mind goes to the intelligence route. Like once you have prediction of the future, you can start building logic and systems off of that. So I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that's the part about crypto I love. I never bought into the whole we're decentralized and down with the banks type philosophy.
Right.
That was the other extreme.
Yeah.
But I did believe that there was a use for it.
Yeah. Totally.
We seen it with Venezuela. When their economy completely collapsed.
Exactly.
Yes. They turned to Bitcoin. The people did. And then Venezuela said, "Oh, well, we need to come up with a cryptocurrency because they're using Bitcoin instead of our stuff." And part of actual currency requires trust. You have to believe in America, to believe in God we trust, backed by the U.S. government, and all those things that they say on our currency. If you don't believe in that, that paper is worthless.
That's right.
And so pure crypto, you don't have to have that trust. The trust is the blockchain.
Right.
There's no way to avoid and do fraudulent stuff, minus hacking and stealing people's coins out of their wallets and stuff. But
that all happens within like more complicated systems.
Yeah.
The smart contracts that weren't, engineered perfectly.
Yep.
That's the scary part about smart contracts.
Yeah.
Is that you have to do it right. And that's okay. I mean, we can do it right, but we're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, and we've seen that happen already. So it's risk.
Yeah. But I think I do hope that the U.S. government never goes to the crypto side.
I think they will.
I do too. I just don't want them to.
Yeah.
Because with great power comes great responsibility, and we haven't seen the responsibility part of our government.
No.
So when you can control it, you now hurt the people that are using it.
That's right.
So when you guys launch and you grow and you're there, I at some point see that you're going to get a knock on the door, and the government's going to be like, how did you know this was going to happen? I do at some point, down the road, as you start bringing in investors and this becomes known.
Yeah.
When the guy bought pizza with Bitcoin, nobody knew anything about it.
Right. Yeah.
The government didn't track it until they were buying drugs and stuff like that off the internet with it.
Yep.
So at some point, if your fruition comes true, I see the government coming and saying, you're going to work for us for a while.
Would that be a bad thing or a good thing in your opinion?
I think it would be a great thing, to be honest. Joe Rogan says something that I chuckle. It's not realistic, but he isn't wrong. He said if we could just dribble a little bit of psilocybin in the water stream, everybody would love each other a lot more. And he's not wrong.
Yeah.
But it takes understanding and people to want the good to come of it.
Isn't that interesting? So I was talking to a friend a little while ago, and they were telling me how they were listening to this podcast, and it was going over some crazy cult, right? It was talking about some crazy cult, and this cult would use like drugs, mm-hmm. right? And so if you go too far down that rabbit hole of psychedelics, even just psychedelics, you don't have to get into like really heavy stuff.
Right.
But you can just go nuts, like it can just be really bad. Yep. So, yeah, there's that too. But not too much psilocybin in the water, just maybe a smidge.
Just a dribble. Yeah. Yeah. and like I said, I don't disagree that I don't necessarily think psilocybin is the right answer, but right. If there was a way that we could get back to the way we were in the 80s, where people sat at the dinner table, they knew their neighbors' names and stuff like that, and still have the technology that we have of today, I would see a perfect world. Yeah. And at that point, for that to have happened, I could see that the government could take a product like yours and make it better for mankind, not for the wrong purposes.
Right.
And so I think that, to answer your question, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take somebody that truly cares, like yourself, on what it's used for.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the really big deciding factor, on how level and who uses it, because with it being open source, you don't know what other people are using it for. They could be trying to use it to figure out the next lotto numbers or the best betting scheme on a sports, which had nothing to do with what you were intending it for.
And I'm sure it will do those things.
It will. Yeah.
It'll be part of the networks. People will be using it for that, but that's okay. That's okay. We're going to try to get the bulk of it to make a world model. That's kind of the goal. Yeah.
That's what I would love to see this enter the 501c.
Yeah.
I would love to see this, because now you're in a community, 95%, 90% of people that are trying to do good,
Nice.
And there's probably 10% out there that are using it for tax purposes and the wrong reasons. So I'll say 90%,
Sure.
But I think it doesn't take everybody. That's what I'm getting at. If the good force outrules the bad force, then it's a great thing.
That's right.
No different than with some drugs. If it was done from a psychiatrist and it was used for the correct procedures, it's a good thing. But you can still use it for the wrong purposes. you know. So, well, brother, I'm gonna bring you forward, man. I'm gonna let you tell everybody where they can go, where to follow you, how they can be a part of this. I'm definitely gonna check it out myself because I am definitely fascinated. So go ahead and give your spiel and let everybody know where they can find more about it.
Sure. So you can go to the website, satorinet.io. That's probably the best place. There's actually a tab at the top that says join, and you got all the socials in there. So we put out all of our updates on Twitter and Discord. If you want to be actually like part of the community, you can go to Discord, and we're talking in there. I'm always available. And we put out like weekly updates. Like, here's what we implemented this week. Here's the new feature. So, if you're that interested, the other place would just be to download it. You can just go to the download tab and hit download. And then it'll just be running on your computer. It's running, by the way, in a Docker container. So it's isolated from the rest of your machine. So you'll have to, that's good, but it also means you'll have to download Docker and install Docker first, then download Satori. But the instructions are really easy. It's 1, 2, 3. So that's probably the best thing to do.
All right, man. I'm definitely going to do it. I'm definitely going to check out your site. I am fascinated, and I think you're doing an amazing thing. I hope a lot of good comes from this, because my mind just running from our conversation, seeing a lot of good things that could come from it. So I hope others do too, and I hope you guys grow and become the next hot market of top 3 coins.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I would love to see you guys being able to do this from the value of your coin, because you get to keep ownership at that point and 100% of decisions of where and how to stop some of the bad stuff and the good stuff from happening. So,
well, with that, if it's funded that way, which is my ideal, the actual community has control over how much funding that is. Yeah. A lot of these projects, they say, yeah, we've got a dev fund, and so it's 20% or 10%, and that's just what it is. And we're just going to take all those tokens forever. And what I did with Satori was I said, okay, we have a dev fund. It's a certain percentage. And as soon as it goes live, people can vote. They can use their token to vote. It should go up or down. So if we're doing a good job, hopefully it'll go up. If the community thinks we're doing a bad job, it'll go down. And I think that's the way it probably should be.
I completely agree, brother. That's the best way to do it. Because now the numbers are deciding without the emotion,
That's right.
So I love it, brother. Well, I'm going to put you in the green room and throw my exit video out, and I'll be with you in a second. All right, man. I appreciate you coming on. It's been an amazing conversation, and I know everybody else is going to be clicking on the links as soon as the show's over. So I'll be one of them.
All righty. Thanks.
All right, brother. All right, man. So I am super fascinated. Can you imagine the good that you could do with actually knowing the future? I mean, not just for profit, but in the non-profit side of the house, the amazing things that you could do with this information. I see a ton of ways that it could help the veteran community, and I'm sure there's ways that the individuals could use it to strengthen their relationships and friendships as well. So I hope all y'all checked it out. I'm super fascinated with crypto. I have not had a lot of classes or a lot of shows about crypto, so it was about time to happen, and I'm glad it did. I want y'all to take care, and remember, don't let the day kick your ass. Kick its ass.